This story is called Goon. Penny's gloved hand tightened around her stick. She stole another quick glance at the clock. 3 minutes gone already in the first period. Bex and her first line D had been pinned in their zone while Brix faced shot after shot from the Snakes, who had managed to fit in 2 line changes already. Another quick glance at the score clock told Penny that Brix had managed 8 saves already. She gripped her stick tighter and gritted her teeth. Penny could tell that Bex and the first line were exhausted. They'd stopped moving their feet and were relying on wide, lazy sweeps of their sticks to try and deflect the puck out of the zone or out of play long enough to get their first line change in. Another shot, and Brix came up with a lightning-fast glove save to shut down the scoring chance. She immediately huddled down into a protective ball in front of the goal after catching the puck, leaving no question she was looking for a stoppage. The ref blew the play dead, and there was a solid ka-chunk sound as both teams' bench doors were pulled open for a line change. Penny was first on the ice from the second line. She skated towards Bex, who was slowly making her way to the bench, breathing hard. Suddenly, in a blur of white and orange, Bex was on her back, and Fleur, who'd been skating off behind her, tripped over Beck's fallen form and went down hard next to her. There was a roar of anger from behind her, and Penny's brain caught up with what had happened. Regina Rattlesnakes player 14, the big girl who played point on their second D line, had skated off through the ranks of exiting Beeves and shouldered Bex to the ice as she skated past. The referee, who had been collecting the puck from Brix, turned back to see what had happened, but too late. By the time she took in the scene, both Beeves players were getting back to their feet, and the offending player 14 was hopping onto her bench. Penny clenched her jaw and skated over to the spot next to her net, glaring over at the offending player on the Beeves bench while she waited for the rest of the players to get in position for the face-off. That had been a dirty move. 2 of her teammates could easily have been injured in there. And 14's consequences had been what? It looked like the worst she was facing was some pats on the back and laughs at the Beeves' expense. No. The word resonated through Penny's mind and body like an electrical current. No. That wouldn't do. Penny thought back to all the scrimmages on Mr. Bennett's pond, and she knew what the natural law of the game would do after a play like that. Through the blood pounding in her ears, she almost missed the puck coming free towards her after the face-off. Penny hit it on instinct, much harder than she meant to, and the puck sailed down the ice, clear of her zone and along the far boards. One of the Snakes players skated out to retrieve it, and the ref whistled the icing call. Penny cringed and gave an apologetic look across to her line mate, who shrugged in response. It happens, Penny could almost hear Shiv saying in her mind. The next face-off led to a drawn-out battle along the boards. Penny had a stick on the puck and wedged her body between it and a pair of Snakes who jostled her relentlessly and jabbed at the puck with their sticks. Penny could see Shiv a few feet away, unmarked by any opponents, but couldn't get her stick loose to make the pass. Move! The nearest linesman shouted, meaning the puck. Frustration welled up in Penny as one of the Snakes slashed her stick out of her hands. Penny felt a red haze descend over her. She planted her feet as close to the puck as she could to protect it while she bent down to retrieve her stick. Except she didn't. Instead, from the half-crouch, she launched herself upwards, straightening as she did, towards the 2 Snakes that had been pressuring her. Penny felt the top of her helmet collide solidly with the front cage of one of the other girls, and she was rewarded by a shriek of surprise as Penny's hands came up a second later and shoved the girl hard. Penny also came down hard, landing on the heels of her skates and falling over backwards, though she was pleased to see that both Snakes players had gone down together in a messy heap of gear. The puck now lay in an empty no-man's land between the 2 sets of fallen players, and Shiv was already getting her stick over top her fallen line mate to grab it and start a rush up the ice. Penny got to her feet and watched her team race up the ice on an unexpected 4-on-3. It was the Beeves' first offense of the game. Shiv got the puck up quickly to Jess H., who carried it over the center line and sent a hard cross-ice pass over to Jess M. Jess M. made a nice move around the Snakes' defender on her side of the ice and with one player from each team tangled up at the blue line, that left the Beavs with a 3-on-1. Jess M passed it back to Jess H, who carried it behind the net and then popped a quick pass out to the slot in front of the Snakes' goal. Jen was waiting and connected solidly on the one-timer, sending the puck hurtling towards the Snakes' goal. Their goalie managed to get an arm up and deflected the shot out of play with her stick-side blocker. The whistle went. Penny heard the ka-chunk of the bench doors opening and saw her line was being summoned for a change. She hurried off the ice and onto the bench. "Pens!" She heard someone shout her name. Penny leaned forward over the edge of the boards to see who was yelling at her. Jess H was trying to get her attention. "Nice play! They never saw you coming." Penny smiled, but it didn't last long. There was a loud, rattling crunch from the ice, and Penny looked over to see the Snakes 14 picking up the puck from a crumpled teammate who was down on the ice, and whose number Penny couldn't see. A moment later, there was a whistle, and the referee was skating over to 14 for a conference. The call was body checking, and 14 was sent off to the penalty box for 2 minutes of quiet contemplation. Penny smiled at hockey karma catching up with the big player. That left Penny's team on the power play, and Penny wasn't on either power play line that game. She positioned herself on the bench so she could open the D side door when her teammates were changing lines. Her team managed to put up 4 shots in the power play, but the game remained tied 0-0 when Penny's next shift started. She lined up for a face-off to the left of the Snakes' net, taking the point position. She found herself paired up against the permanent scowl of the Snakes' number 14. Beneath the harshly arched eyebrows and steel gray eyes, 14 wore the world's biggest shit-eating grin. And she was grinning at Penny. Penny, for her part, couldn't shake the thought that 14 looked like the Joker from the Batman cartoons Pat still binge-watched sometimes. The puck dropped. The scramble ensued. The puck squirted over to Penny's side of the ice, and she found herself against the boards, battling 14 for the puck. For all the other players had a size and weight advantage, it was obvious she was the less skilled of the two with her stick. Penny managed to dig the puck from her possession fairly easily and sent it across to Shiv to cycle back into play. 14 didn't like that very much. "Think you're hot shit, don't ya?" 14 spat across at Penny as she skated back into the play, making sure to bump shoulders. Well, more correctly, bump her tricep across Penny's shoulders because of the height difference as she skated past. Penny felt the impact and stumbled on her skates from the sheer weight of the impact. Penny got 2 more quick touches that shift as the puck came to the point, and she held the zone before passing it back into play. But mostly the play was over on Shiv's side and behind the net. A shot went off one of the Snakes defenders' sticks and out of play, and Shiv was back on the bench for the rest of the period. In the locker room, Shiv listened briefly while their coach congratulated the team on holding the game to a tie, as if this was some great achievement. They were told to shake off the no calls that had happened and to keep respecting the refs and focus on playing their game. Penny turned off at that point, and when the coach was done, put her headphones in and teed the next song up on her game day playlist. The upbeat intro to Pink's "So What" blared to life in her ears, and she leaned back against the wall of the change room, closing her eyes for 4 minutes and letting the music wash over her. The final ba-da-ba-ba-da-da had barely concluded when the room around her livened as players got to their feet and readied to go back out to the bench. Shiv took out the headphones, stowed them in her pack, and followed the line out. The second period started on a different tempo. The Snakes had clearly gotten a more useful message during the break than to keep playing their game, because they hit the ice with a purpose. They put up 2 quick goals and drew a delay of game penalty off of Beck's, as a bad clearing attempt went over the glass before leaving the zone. With Beck's in the box, that promoted Penny to the first PK line. She hit the ice, determined to use the opportunity to show that she could compete alongside the first liners. It did not go well. She found on her first attempt to clear a loose puck that came her way, instead turning it over to the Snakes center, who had a quality scoring chance Bricks had to handle. She skated over and patted Bricks on the head in thanks and apology. After the face-off, she was skating for a loose puck and caught an edge, sending herself spinning out into a heap on the ground. From there, she had a fantastic view of the rattlesnake player she'd been racing, grabbed the puck along the boards, and slid it into the net on a wraparound. Penny slammed her stick against the ice as she got to her feet. Her line was summoned off, and she skated to the bench. The coach leaned over when she was back in the lineup and suggested that she take a seat behind the line and cool down for a minute. Penny did as she was instructed, but rage welled up in her, and as she stepped back from the line of her teammates and sat down on the bench, she hung her head and rested her helmet on the end of her stick. Penny looked up expectantly at the coach for the rest of the period, but wasn't given the green light to get back in the lineup. Cool off apparently meant cool her heels for that shit performance on the PK. The Snakes put 2 more away before the end of the period, and Penny felt increasingly frustrated at her helplessness. When the buzzer rang, she shoved herself to her feet and was the first off the bench and into the dressing room. She angrily hit the wall with her stick and threw herself down on the locker room bench. Penny unclipped her helmet and slammed it onto the ground in front of her, stuffing her gloves in it too. The next one through the door was her coach. Penny glared at her. For the first time since she'd been benched, the coach looked back with a coldly emotionless gaze. "Are you ready to leave that little display in the second period and move on?" Coach demanded. Before Penny could respond, the locker room door swung open and a couple of players were about to enter. "Wait there," Coach demanded. The girls looked at each other in surprise, but shut the door amidst a wave of whispers and giggles. "Yes, Coach," Penny replied. "Good. Those mistakes were sloppy, and you're a better player than that. You're not here to impress us. You're here to contribute by doing your job on the ice. No more, no less. Any questions?" "Yes, Coach. No, Coach." Penny looked down. "Good, because we need you on your game in the third." Coach looked away from Penny. The door swung open again as a new group of girls tried to enter. Yes, come in," Coach said. Penny realized she was crying and quickly wiped the tears from her eyes. Shiv came and sat beside her, but didn't say anything. Penny fumbled her headphones into her ears and took herself out of the moment. Soleil's Rise Up, followed by Destiny Child's Survivor, helped Penny center herself. As the intermission wound down and the team headed back to the ice, she repeated the chorus of Rise Up to herself. "Rise up now. If you don't ever fall, you don't change at all. Rise up now." Penny slid off the edge of the board and onto the ice. Her legs pumped hard, and she dug her blades deeply into the ice as she joined her team on the rush. The on-the-fly D-line change had been well-timed, and the Beavs had caught the other team on a bad change. Penny got to the blue line just in time to pick up a rebound from the first shot. She saw the center looping around the back of the net, and the 2 wingers in tight coverage around the boards, trying to get a better position. She passed the puck over to Shiv, who had just reached the blue line herself. Shiv skated in a circle, pulling the defender off of one of the wingers, and passed the puck back to Penny. Penny passed across to Jess H., the free winger, and Jess picked up the pass just before a defender intercepted it. Jess H. turned quickly, protecting the puck, and dumped it blindly backwards towards the point. Jen at center had just gotten back into position and grabbed the puck. She deked twice before burying it behind the goalie's shoulder for the Beavs' first goal of the game. The red light went on and the buzzer blared. The Beavs players on the ice erupted in jubilation and skated together, hugging and patting each other on the back and helmet. As the group split apart, Jen threw her head back and roared. Not screamed, roared in triumph at finally having put a point on the board this match. Penny's line was left on the ice to continue their shift after the goal, but the Snakes made a full change, and Penny was once again across from 14 in that jokerish, grinning scowl. Jess H. cleanly won the face-off and passed it back to Penny. Penny picked up the puck and saw the lumbering form of Snakes 14 barreling towards her. She clearly had no intention of playing the puck, and was aiming to take the body on Penny, rather than try and make a play. That was when Penny decided to ignore everything Coach had told her in the intermission. Penny spun and passed the puck backwards, sending it into her own zone for Bricks to pick up and play. Then she pushed off with her foot, taking her body towards the boards, and ducked. The move had originally been one of self-preservation. She'd hoped that the hit from 14 would avoid her head or other important body parts. Instead, the height difference caused 14 to collide with Penny's turtled body just above 14's knee pads. 14, already off stride from the surprise back pass and indecision whether to keep going or break off and chase the puck, went fully off balance and fell. No, not fell. Flipped forward over top of Penny and went hard into the boards. Penny didn't see it, but she heard the impact and felt the weight of the other player going over her and then coming down on top of her and then sliding off. Penny stood up and looked back to see 14 face down on the ice. Penny just stared for a moment. She was mutely aware of the competing jeers and cheers from the two benches at what had just happened. Penny bent down and put a hand on 14's jersey, about to ask how she was doing. 14 suddenly brought her elbow up into Penny's face cage, and Penny stumbled backwards. 14 was getting to her feet, blood trickling from a cut on the bridge of her nose. She glared at Penny, as a bull would glare at a matador. Penny backed away slowly, giving her space, but 14 was on her feet and coming towards her now. From the corner of her eyes, Penny could see the referee whistling at the player and skating towards them, but too far away to help with what came next. 14 threw her gloves off and pulled a meaty fist back as far as her helmet. Penny shut her eyes and leaned heavily to the other side. The force behind the punch must have been intense, because it threw 14 fully off her skates. She missed Penny entirely, and her body followed her fist in a downward arc all the way to the ground. Penny took a breath, but the referee was now on top of 14 and struggling to get her off the ice. Penny's bench was shouting at her, so she skated over to the safety of her team while the officials swarmed the still combative Rattlesnake player. Shiv skated up next to her. "Holy shit, I can't believe you just took that on," Shiv said, pointing to 14, who was now being led off the ice, her game done for the day. "I didn't," Penny started, but got cut off. "You're a fucking goon, girl," Bex shouted from the bench. "Did you see her go down twice?" "No, Goon, goon, goon," the bench was chanting, picking up on Beck's lead. "Goon, goon, goon." Penny's face swelled. She was hardly the world's toughest player, and was in no way whatsoever a goon. But after her second period, she was glad to be part of the team getting back into the game. Penny's line changed during the stoppage, and the Beavs scored twice during the extended 5-minute power play that followed 14's ejection from the game. Penny got back on the ice for 2 more shifts after the power play, but the game had changed pace again, and now both teams were clearly tired and playing lots of long passes, dumping the puck once they gained neutral zone possession, and making quick changes. Penny only got a few touches during clearing passes from her own zone, but the Snakes didn't seem to have it in them to send anyone after the puck into the Beavs' zone at that point. Penny was fired up, but the rest of her team seemed to have spent their adrenaline during the 5-minute major and lost their wind now. This was the time when she remembered her coach telling her not to show off, but just play a solid game. And she did. Time expired with a final score of 5-3 for the Rattlesnakes. It wasn't a particularly important game in the season, neither the first nor last loss for the Beavs, and it hadn't decided anything in the standings of the season. It had been an awakening for Penny, though, seeing how fired up her team had been after she had stood up to number 14, and how the game had changed afterwards. The nickname had stuck with her after that. Shiv and Goon were now the second D-line for the Beavs, and Penny decided it was a nickname she was going to live up to, even if she wasn't ready to do so just yet. Well, that was fun. It's the end of this Goon Girl story. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.